I want to finish the PowerPoint from 2 weeks ago. I want to go through a quick zoning analysis. I want to go through smart growth so you can act like you care about smart growth when you have plans. I want to do a 20-minute PowerPoint presentation, and I'm going to make believe I'm talking to elected officials so you can see how I do PowerPoint and the points I'm trying to make to get my project approved. Remember, this whole class boils down to just the following. Get the 3 votes, make the money, move on. Okay? And if you can't get your 3 votes, then go on to another project. You know, that's what it's really all about. And then I'm going to go through the textbook. The textbook is written, I don't want to say like a novel, but it's written as a non-textbook. And you have to be able to understand every concept in that textbook, because that's basically the guts, the bread and butter of what people do. So we went through about half of this. I want to go through it real quick until we get to the point. Can we dim the lights a little bit? I'd like to have some more contrast. Actually, yeah, that's the one I wanted. Is that good? Yeah. I don't mind that one, unless people can't.
Which one?
I like it slightly darker.
Both arms.
Yeah, is that okay?
Yes.
You don't have top on?
Yeah. Okay.
Good try.
Planning, land use law, real estate development, you can't separate it. I have many addictions. One of them is fast food. And on the way down here, since my wife's not around to yell at me, I stopped at McDonald's.
Bad.
And it is bad, but I got a double with no mustard. You know, because it's only $1.59, cheap. And I got a white milk, like a kid's milk. So $3.06, I got my protein. Now, every once in a while, the people at McDonald's don't quite get the no mustard part. And trying to scrape mustard off bread and burger, you just can't get it all out. Okay? When I teach students in the urban regional planning school about politics, I say politics is like the mustard. You just can't get it out. It's there, you know? It's like if they put a tomato on your sandwich, you can take it off, you'll be fine. What you need to understand is this is a very political thing. You can't take the politics out of land use approvals, planning, land use law. You want to get a project approved in Fort Lauderdale? I'll give you the name of the 3 land use lawyers I would use. Because they've played the game, they've raised the money, they've sent the checks, they know the system, okay? She's one of them. You know, you've got to understand it's politics, okay? It's not the smartest people in the room. This is the aha moment. Even though if you own this land and you can make a boatload of money doing this tower right next to that, government has the right to say no. It's not compatible. This is the standard that you have to understand. Okay? You have to act like you actually care about making the community better. And then you can all understand there should be a transition from high-rise to mid-rise to low-density to single-family home. That's the aha moment of compatibility. That's kind of like the standard of planning, and that's kind of like what you need to understand. That's how you're going to be judged and tested. When you leave here with whatever grade I give you, that's irrelevant. The only grade that matters is did you get your 3 votes. And to get your 3 votes, you start with, do I have staff helping me with a good staff report? If you don't have a compatible plan, you're not going to get a good staff report. Then it's going to be a pretty steep uphill. I don't know if any of you go to the gym, but if you go on the treadmill and you can make it real steep, you know, that's pretty intense. It's easier, and keep it flat, okay? Don't make your life any more complicated. Try to do compatible projects, okay? When we talk about the law, there's two things. There's case decisions by judges called cases, and everything else is code, okay? We have federal, state, regional, county, local, and the key thing, I told you this 2 weeks ago, a little bit of Latin, stare decisis. And I always use this example, don't mean to offend anyone, Roe v. Wade. That decision's from the 70s. Any other woman today in this country who wants to have an abortion doesn't need to relitigate. We rely upon stare decisis. Let what's already been decided carry over, okay? So you need to understand that even though a case was decided, that doesn't really affect you directly. It does if your situation is the same. That's why lawyers have to research what other judges have said. So you might find all of a sudden some Yahoo in Yeehaw Junction ended up in a lawsuit and a case was decided, and that might affect you down in Fort Lauderdale because a judge has ruled. Okay? Everything in planning is balance. It's your property rights as an American to do what you want with your land, balanced against the public interest. Okay? But remember, the House usually wins, so try to work with government, don't fight government. There it is, the Fifth Amendment. Government cannot take your property without paying for it. That's what we're going to talk about today. Government cannot take your property without paying for it. Everything must be consistent. There's a comprehensive plan, there's a zoning map, and then there's development orders and development permits. You have to do a project for part of your final grade. There's no way you can pass that project if you tell me the comprehensive plan is yellow for residential, the zoning allows residential, and you come along with a commercial project. Okay? You got to get everything lined up. If you go to Vegas, what are the three numbers you want to see when you pull the lever? 777. 776 is no good. You don't win. You need to get comp plan, zoning, and your project all lined up to be consistent. That's the legal buzzword. Everything has to be consistent. It's like this. You're developers, you're business people, you want to make money. Unfortunately, no one's ever going to give you a blank piece of paper to say, knock your socks off, go make as much money as you want. Everything that you have is going to be basically fill in the blanks, like in a coloring book, of what's already been decided by the community and the government. You've got to stay in those lines. Okay? You can't go outside the lines. You can't do your own thing. Okay? How does the court decide? It depends. They're human. Everything's a balance. Okay? Okay, this is the tug of war. Government is going to mess with you in your career, believe me. That's what government does best. They mess with property owners. Government thinks they can do no wrong because they're the government. They think everything they want to do to you is, aha, I can hurt you, police power. At the other extreme, every time government does anything, I think they have basically taken my property rights, either directly or indirectly. It's inverse condemnation. Okay? All inverse condemnation is the following. If this is my property and they take it, clearly they have to pay. But if they don't take it, but they don't let me get any economic benefit out of it except look at it, I'm saying that's the equivalent of you taking my property. That's inverse condemnation. That's when you write the check. And that's the tug of war. Okay? And I gave you this last time as a review. Let's go through it real quick. This is the aha moment. If government takes your phone, they take your land, they're writing a check. Okay, that's eminent domain. Government says, hey, turn it off on a plane. We don't want planes to crash. Turn it off by construction sites where they're making dynamite blow, because we don't want you to, by accident, send off the charge early. Send it off, turn it off in a hospital, because there's people with pacemakers or something. Those are all reasonable things where government can mess with you, right? But if government says, yeah, buy your phone, spend $1,000, but guess what? You can never turn it on. They haven't taken it, but the regulation has gone, quote, too far. Okay? It's the same thing as they probably should have taken it. You're never going to get those easy things. It's always that balance. But that's the argument. Okay? And that was the standard. Has government gone too far? Okay? I think they do any time they do anything. Okay? But that's the balance. No one really knows what it means. There's no bright line decision. NaCl is salt, globally. It's always salt. We're never going to get that here. Okay? Since you're never going to get that bright line decision, you never know, I would settle. Okay? It's like this. Do you want your future to be in the hands of our President of the United States on his 7 a.m. tweet or his 11 a.m. tweet? They're probably completely different depending upon what's going on. It's a crapshoot. A judge may be no different. A settlement, you know what you get. I don't like to put my hands in the hands of a jury or a judge. Cut a deal, move on. Okay, Loretto was very simple. That little cable was government taking your space. They only got $1, but this set the standard that whenever government comes on your property, and they said, look, you got 12 acres. We're just going to take a 15-foot walkway on the side of your property for the public. Like that line there? Yeah, they can do that, write a check. Because they've physically invaded your space forever. That's a physical taken. Lucas was the other extreme. We're not taking your property, but you can't rebuild. You can look at it, you can stand on it, but you just can't rebuild. And in the middle was this Penn Central of, they didn't want this developer to build over Grand Central Station. So whenever government does something to you, chances are you're never going to get an absolute Loretto where they've taken it and they're refusing to pay. Because usually their lawyers are smart enough to say, hey, you've taken it, write the check. And you're probably never going to get the 100% extreme of over-regulation to the point of 100% you can't use it. Most things are in the middle. Now let me tell you the bad news. And I would like to meet this judge, and I would like to kind of take this judge outside and give him my opinion. There's been judges who say the following: a 93% reduction in value on someone's property rights is not a taken. Government doesn't have to pay. What? You've taken 92% of my value, damn government. I'm going to go to court to sue you. And the judge says, wait a minute, you've got 6-7% left. Get out of my court. Government, it's nice to be government. Okay? This is not stacked up in your favor. Okay? Let's talk about something different. Does everyone understand this as a concept? What I need you to know as non-land use lawyers is this. If government goes too far, you're going to win. Most of it's in that middle. Therefore, be nice, work with government, work with your neighbors, see if you can get that win-win situation where you're not trying to fight saying, you've taken away my rights, I'm going to take it all to the Supreme Court. You can do that if you have millions of dollars to pay for lawyers, and you might lose because the things are stacked against you. Picture it like this. Maybe some of you have had kids before. Maybe some of you remember your own childhood. Lung 13, 14-year-old kid is trying to argue with mom and dad why they should be allowed to go to the mall on Friday night and hang out. Okay? You can argue all you want. Your parents are going to say, no, go to your own. What are you going to do? Call your grandparents up and say, tell mom and dad to get with it? No. Okay, let's change the framework now. This is the Nolan case, famous Supreme Court case. I like rich people with beach homes. What I don't like are poor people in government beating up on rich people who have beach homes. There's a rule that the government passed that said, gee, we want the public to get a sense that there's a beach there. But if all these rich people keep building their mansions to themselves, there's a psychological barrier that the 99.9% of California that can't afford a beach house can't even see the beach. Okay? So there's a rule that was established that said government gets to regulate the width of your house, so at least you can get a little sliver that there's ocean there. Public health, safety, welfare, police power. Okay? Mr. Nolan has a beach cottage and he wants to knock it down and he wants to make his house a little bit bigger. Government says, you know what? We're going to let you make your house a little bit bigger. But in order for you to get the permit, we're going to use this rule that says the public has the right to not have a psychological barrier to the beach to see it. What we're going to want you to do is there's a public beach over here, and there's another public beach over here. We want you to give across your property an easement so the public can go from here to there. The easement is not ownership, it's the next level down, but it's almost like the Loretto. It's a invasion of that space. Well, Mr. Nolan didn't like that. Sues was all the way to the United States Supreme Court. Mr. Nolan wins. And I'll tell you why. No one's arguing the right of the government to limit setbacks, to keep open space for the public to see the ocean. Okay? But think about this. If the whole purpose of this law is to let the public see the beach and not have that psychological barrier, if you're already on the beach, do you have a psychological barrier? No, it's the beach. You're already here. So using this law to have those people get a view doesn't allow you to then say to Mr. Nolan, by the way, give up a piece of your property, because these people are already on the beach. Everyone get that logic? That's government going too far. Yes?
Wouldn't you also get easements from all the other neighbors to get across?
Well, I think their attitude was this. They know eventually, the thing about rich people, they're so predictable. One rich person knocks their thing down and does something real special. Well, now the neighbor next door feels less rich, so he's the one to do the same thing. Because you never want someone to have more money than you. Didn't they teach you that already? Yeah. The goal is to be on top. Okay? So then they know eventually they're going to get an easement from everyone. But now they can't. But you see the nuance? The police power to see from here to here doesn't let government take your land here. Yes?
Question, so people at the Cove and people at the ferry beach, they couldn't walk across?
Okay, this is the point. The public has the right to be on the mean high water line. They don't have the right necessarily to walk across the dry stand. I actually have a beach house, and I have to share my beach with the public. I don't have the right to kick them off here, but we have the right to kind of like kick them off here. The government was trying to say, we want you to let them have that right. Okay? What you need to know is this is government Remember I said the balance of the public interest, private rights? Everyone would agree it would be good for the public, the 99.9% that don't have a beach house, to be able to go from park to park. It's not a bad thing. Not like we're selling crack, you know, it's a good thing. But why should Mr. Nolan have to pay for it? If the government wants that, buy it. Fifth Amendment. Okay? I'll sell you an easement. $500,000. I'll give you that easement all day long. So what we know from the Nolan case is government just can't pass a rule unless there's some type of rational nexus. There was no rational nexus for this condition because the Lord was trying to do this. So you want to do your project. Government's going to come back to you, staff, with 15 conditions. None of them are good. Okay? 13 of them you probably have to suck up. But those last two, if there's no rational nexus to what you're doing in the law that allows them, they can't go forward. So that's the Nolan case. Let me tell you about the Dolan case. Dolan has a hardware store. They want to expand their hardware store a little bit. Government says, guess what? We think people are going to want to bike to your hardware store because they're trying to encourage bike lanes. And they said the following: we want you to give up some of your property for a bike lane. Okay, I don't know about you, but when I go to Home Depot and Lowe's, I don't bike there because I'm probably carrying something back out. It's heavy. And by the way, we want you to give some of your land for drainage and for a park. Okay? Dolan says, I'm not doing that, and they sue. Goes all to the Supreme Court. Dolan wins. Not only does there need to be a rational nexus for what government's doing, it has to be rationally proportionate to the impact. And I'll give you a better example before I go back to these facts. If you're going to do a 100-unit subdivision, okay, here in Davie, 100 apartments or 100 single-family homes, should you have to spend $27 million to do a new interchange or a 595 because you're doing those 100 units? No. Yes, you're going to have a road impact, but it has to be proportionate to what you're doing. You just can't say, you want to do your 100 units? We need a new interchange. Okay. So the standard here, and we're going to get this in the wrap-up, is government has to make sure everything they ask of you is proportionate. Then there was the Kunz case, which we're going to spend some time on next week in detail. So you'll have this aha moment. And I'll give you a quick preview. St. John's Water Management District. We have the South Florida Water Management District in South Florida. Central has St. John's. He wanted to develop his property. And government basically said, yeah, you can, but we want you to go about 1.5 miles off-site and do some off-site improvements to help, and we'll let you do it. And they wanted him to pay more money. And he sued and he won. So that was 3 for the developers, the good guys, 0 for the bad guys, the government. Then the mural case came last year, and I don't think it's going to have the teeth that the government people think it has, so I'm going to skip over this. But this is the summary that you need to know. Government's going to F with you, and you can fill in the blank. Okay? What you need to do, and a lot of it is look at your pro forma. How much effing with can you justify in your pro forma? Because you don't want to litigate, you don't want to slow down your project. But the standards to keep people honest should be government has to have an essential nexus when they're going to ask you for conditions or ask you to do something. Okay? And when they ask you to do something, the impact or the amount has to be roughly proportionate. Okay? So yes, you're going to do a 100-unit subdivision in this great area known as Davie. Okay? And you all know that when you go down a road, if you don't have a deceleration lane to turn off, then the people going to the subdivision have to make the right angle. And if 2 of them are doing that, it's going to back up all the traffic. So we all know that if you're gonna do a 100-unit subdivision, off University or off Nova Drive, government could say, okay, 100 units, 2 cars per house, that's 200 cars. They come, they go. You know that those cars are gonna have an impact on the community. Expect you to have to pay for a turn lane in. Okay? Because there is the nexus between your project and community impacts on the road. That's the essential nexus. But a turn lane meets the rough proportionality standard. Okay? Doing a whole new interchange flyover does not. Okay? So, when you do your first site plan, and your engineer consultant comes back and says, we gotta do a turn lane and curb in, and that's gonna cost you $400,000, don't call me up and say, I'm ready to take this case all the way to Supreme Court. No. Write the $400,000 check, get it done, just add it on to, every house. That's $4,000 more per house, and move on. Okay? The Kuntz case says, even if they're not trying to take your land, okay, like Nolan Dolan, it applies to the same thing. If government's trying to make you pay impact fees that don't have a nexus and they're too far beyond, they can't do that either. So the first 3 cases basically say government can F with you, but they have to make sure they don't go too far. Okay? This is the standard that lawyers will talk back and forth among each other. I just want you to have a sense of what's going on. Okay, first, English was a case that says if government passes a law, just like Lucas, you can't go on your property, you can't build on it, all you can do is stand on it and look at the stars, and then you sue them and you win. Well, they've taken your property for that 2 or 3 years of litigation. That was a temporary taking. Government just can't say, oh, we're sorry, we won't do it again. Good, you won't do it again because the court told you won't do it again, but guess what? For those 2 or 3 years that I couldn't use my property because you had this rule that went too far, you're going to write me a check for that. Okay? Tahoe Sierra case. This is Lake Tahoe. This is one of the prettiest parts of the United States. It's a beautiful lake between Nevada and California. And a lot of development was taking place, and that was affecting the quality of the water. Government said, look, we want to put a moratorium in effect so we can study how much development we're allowed. And they put a 32-month moratorium in effect. And said, for the next 32 months, you can't develop on your land because we're going to study what's the right amount of development so it doesn't adversely impact this beautiful thing called Lake Tahoe. Sued, goes all the way to Supreme Court. U.S. Supreme Court says 32 months for something as pristine as Lake Tahoe is reasonable. It's not a taken. It's not a temporary taken under this. Government's not writing a check. That's why I'm saying facts matter. Okay? So, something as beautiful as Lake Tahoe, 32 months is allowed. If government doesn't like what's going on, like there's too much fast food popping up, okay? And they think we don't want to become the fast food drive-through capital of South Florida, government can pass a moratorium that says stop, no more fast food restaurants until we study it. But I think you would all agree, if 32 months for something as pristine as Lake Tahoe is a good standard, we're not going to let the town of Davie say no more fast food restaurants for 32 months. We have to study it. You don't need 32 months to study that impact. Okay? Don't get excited. A lot of governments were not happy with the state constitution being changed to allow medical marijuana. So a lot of governments said, wait, stop, we gotta figure out where we're gonna let these dispensaries go. The rule of thumb is government has the right to F with you for about 6 months. And if it's something as prestigious as Lake Tahoe, beyond 6 months. So what happened, they tried a couple of years ago to do medical marijuana. It didn't quite get enough votes. It went through this past November, it got the votes, the legislature's moving it forward. Every government basically said, time out, we're not gonna let you put Peter's Pot Palace in our downtown. 6 months, time out. And then they could study it. Okay, and they could decide where they wanted to go. Because this is the problem. If you do, have any of you been to CVS or Walgreens and you do the drive up to get your medicine, right? And they ask for your driver's license, your credit card, maybe your insurance. They put it in a little bag and you go away, right? Well, what's the difference whether you get little pills or you get little buds? So why are we going to treat Peter's Pot Palace drive-through any different than Walgreens or CVS? If the state government has already said you can't prohibit it. So government at the local level knew they couldn't stop it, but they had the right to just figure out where they wanted to go. Okay? And if you start treating Peter's Pot Palace different than Walgreens or CVS, my lawyers are going to bring an equal protection argument. Okay? Hey, how am I any different? Okay? So what you need to know is government can slow you down, but they probably can't stop you. 6 months is a good standard. Okay? Again, everything in this class is the following. The police car might say to protect and serve. My world, I don't think they're protecting and serving. I think they're taken from me. Okay? Or if they're protecting, they're not protecting my pro forma. They're protecting the community. Okay? It depends. I can't tell you what the law is going to say. Everything's a balance. And since I can't give you an answer, settle. Get your deal done. Maybe leave something on the table. Do you really need all 27 stories? Can't you make enough money with 20? Okay. Okay, let me tell you what's happened in zoning. There was once a time when putting multifamily next to single family was the greatest travesty in the world. Worse than the Middle East peace crisis. Worse than North Korea maybe sending a nuke off. Oh my God, they're going to let an apartment building next to single family. And then zoning came along and said, separate single family from multifamily. The two should never be in the same framework. Okay? Because you rich people in your single family houses don't want to see them in their multifamily houses. We're not talking about luxury condominiums, okay, high-rises that George Perez does on the beach. We're talking about walk-up rental apartments, okay? So the connotation, roughly 100 years ago, was we separate everything. Zoning is based on separation. Industrial, commercial, residential, single-family, multi, everything should be different. That was the initial framework. Now planners start saying, well, maybe we've gone too far. Maybe certain uses can go together. Has anyone been to Meisner Park in Boca Raton? Or been to City Place in West Palm?
Yeah.
Okay. Or been to downtown Fort Lauderdale? You can actually live, work, and play in an 18-hour community. And what would be wrong with having anything but a Winn-Dixie shopping center on the lower level and restaurants and then live above it? Right? That's called smart growth. Because think about this. I may not be the smartest person in the world, but I do know this, and I'll bet my pinky. Ready? These people here are not driving their car to go food shopping there, right? We've now gotten people off the road. The more we can get people to live within a quarter of a mile or a half mile of a transit-oriented development stop like Tri-Rail or Brightline, you don't need to have a second car. You maybe don't even need to have any car. That's smart growth. Okay? That's what planners drool over. Okay? That's what they want to see.
But wouldn't that also have a negative effect because you're not supporting the surrounding cities or neighborhoods?
No, I think you are supporting them because what...
Outside of that range that you're talking about, that quarter mile I'm talking about, like outside of that, wouldn't that?
Well, the people outside the quarter of a mile, they're allowed to still come in the quarter of a mile and they can drive there.
Right.
What I'm saying is this, ready? We can't go east because it's the ocean. We can't go west, it's the Everglades. We have no more land left. So when I was your age, we had vacant land. Today, we have Winn-Dixie shopping centers that need to be destroyed and redeveloped with mixed-use development like this, okay? And then what happens, you get that tight, compact infill development, and then the outer ring can get a little bit denser and things can keep getting better. We're in the redevelopment mode. The point I'm trying to get you to see, historically, the case called Euclid, that's why it's called Euclidean zoning, and most zoning codes still have the separation component to it, was the old way of doing business. This is what planners want today. So when you do a new project in an urban area, don't try to just think, oh, I'm going to do a single use. You might end up doing a single use. But remember, planners are going to push this. This is what I teach them. Okay? So they listen to me for 4 years in planning school. They get out. Okay? That's all they know. Smart growth, mixed infill development, transit-oriented development. You come along, want to make money, they're going to hold you to that standard I taught them. Because that's what the national standards are at the American Planners Association. So, it used to be separate the use, now it's try to put them back together. The point is, government has the right to force you to use mixed uses. They can force you with police power to separate, and they can force you to follow a form-based code to have urban design criteria for what they get what they want it to look like. The point is, government gets to set the standards together with the community, and if they haven't gone too far, don't fight them, work with them. Lulus, locally unwanted land uses. Landfills, adult entertainment, medical marijuana, tattoos, and Walmart. Lulus, locally unwanted land uses. That's what Lulus stand for. There's nothing wrong with shopping at Walmart. No one wants to live right next to Walmart. You have the traffic, you have the trucks coming in, you have the lights, okay? Now, once upon a time, tattoos had an extreme negative connotation. It's a different era today. But I can tell you this historically, Starbucks did not want to go next to a tattoo parlor. If you're a landlord, you don't want 6 nail salons, 3 gyms that pay month to month, and a tattoo parlor. You want national credit-worthy tenants. Okay? Adult entertainment. Okay? I think I might have told you there's 2 ways to deal with adult entertainment. You either condense it in one area of town, or you spread it out throughout the town and make sure it can't be next to each other or next to residential or next to a church or a school. But you can't just say, our town does not allow adult entertainment, because that's a First Amendment right. But government gets to say, yeah, well, we're going to put it by the landfill, or we're going to put it by the industrial. We're not going to let it be in our downtown. You want to make money. The best way to make money is to have customers know that you're there. You're going to want 52 signs, neons flashing, come here to Pete's Palace. Here we are. Okay? Well, that's not basically nice for the community. Government gets to regulate the size of your sign. They get to regulate how many signs. Government probably can't regulate what your sign says. Now, we all know that expression, I'm sure you've heard, you can't yell fire in a theater if there's no fire. We do have certain limits on First Amendment. But you just need to realize, when you get your project approved, you should be getting at that same time your sign plans approved, not come back later. Okay? I was doing work with Holy Cross Hospital over on US 1 and Commercial. Okay? They needed variances because they needed about 50, 60 signs. Now, you would never let a commercial plaza have 50, 60 signs, but don't you think you want 82-year-old people to know where their emergency room is? And don't you think you want that arrow in many, many locations to get people there? There it makes sense. So signs are important, but there's limits to that. Okay, this is the ultimate extreme. I'm going to Oregon this summer for a concert. I hope I survive, because there's a lot of liberals out there. I think I'll be okay. What they do there is they put a circle around the city and they say, you can't build beyond that. That's the urban growth boundary. You want to do development, you got to be inside. You're out here, SOL. You got to be in here. Now, Miami-Dade County tried that, but the benefit of Miami-Dade is they let lawyers like Greenberg-Traurig lobby to move the line. Okay? And we moved the line so far from Miami back in the 70s, 80s, we allowed Kendall to now be an extension, and the goal is to really make Homestead and Miami be one big thing if you're a developer. Florida's done very poor maintaining the line because of political influence. Oregon's done a great job. Boulder, Colorado has done a great job to run the line. If you're outside the line, I suggest you move on, or realize you're going to have to write a lot of campaign checks. So, government's going to mess with you. They're going to try to slow you down. They can draw a line in the sand. That's okay. That's what I just showed you, the circle. There's a case called Ramapo. Government gets to say, sorry, you don't get to build because we don't have infrastructure yet. And if you skip down to concurrency, Florida statutes, luckily over the last 25 years we've watered it down. But when I started my career, concurrency basically said the following: you cannot develop your property if we don't have sufficient water, sewer, drainage, parks, roads, school, fire, police, library. Well, that probably makes sense, because think about this. If you're going to sell a house to someone, they probably want to know that they can flush and stuff's going to go away, right? They probably want to know that there's a landfill for their garbage to go to. And we probably need to have a school for their kids, otherwise they wouldn't buy in the first place. So that stuff made sense. What really was scaring the development community were the roads. Because we never funded the roads. We had a multi-billion-dollar backlog of what we needed, poor levels of service, and it basically stopped development. And then luckily we litigated and said, look, you can make me pay my fair share, but don't make me do an interchange in I-95 because you let 20 other projects get through without doing anything. Luckily, the good Republicans in Tallahassee have watered this down, where the Growth Management Act of 1985 in Florida is at half of what it used to be. There's no teeth. It's like looking at a snake, like a black snake in Florida. They're not going to bite you. They're not poisonous, and then go away. But when it first came out, it was like a water moccasin. I mean, it basically stopped development. But again, we're not going to let that happen. Petaluma and also the Keys do this, and Boulder, Colorado. Boulder, Colorado is beautiful, but no one can afford to live there because they limit the number of building permits. In the Keys, they limit the number of building permits. That is allowed. You remember I told you people in Boca Raton is special? Did you get that message? People in Boca Raton is so special that years ago, when there was 39,000 of us, we looked at each other and we said, gee, we don't want any more people coming here because it's going to inconvenience with us being perfect. Let's cap the city at 40,000 and no more building permits beyond the 40. That got shot down in a heartbeat. Okay, you can't do that. Okay, you can't put a population cap. Because going back to our fundamental rights, we have the right to travel. You have the right to leave Florida on I-95 and go into Georgia. Georgia can't say, we don't want you. We have certain rights to move. The point is here, going back to that standing of too far, government can slow you down. But they can't stop you by saying, sorry, no more room at the inn, we've already hit our limit. Okay, yes?
So with the growth boundaries, right? Like with the ag reserve in the Boynton area, how long does this process usually take? If, you know, you were saying don't do anything outside that boundary line, but, you know, once it comes to topic of conversation?
What you're talking about is on 441 in the west area of Boca Raton, Delray, Boynton. 40 years ago, when they were doing the future land use map, someone said, gee, it's nice to eat. Food comes from ag activities. Why don't we reserve some ag land so we know that everyone in Palm Beach County can always know there's food? Great concept. So they took this bright green and they took a rectangle out. And they said, that's going to be the ag reserve. You can never develop there. 40 years ago, that was fine. Because 40 years ago, there was enough other stuff. I was actually representing farmers in that area who realized the following. You can make a lot more money growing condominiums and townhomes than you can green peppers. So what we did, we used political influence to get the federal government to first make 441 wider, so now you have the road capacity to say, hey, we have the road, let us develop. And what happens over time, they keep chipping away at it. But again, that was where government did have the right to say no. Develop here, sorry, you're on the wrong side of the line. But sooner or later, like anything else, politics, yes.
So the UBC in Miami-Dade, you don't think it's going to be moved?
No, I think it's been moved.
Yeah.
It gets moved every year.
But does it keep moving every year?
Well, I don't know if it's every year, but I know that when it started when I was a young lawyer at Greenberg Traurig,
Right.
okay, Kendall would not be allowed
Right.
to do what is today. But they keep pushing the line. I don't do work in Miami-Dade today, so I don't know where the line is. The point is, government draws the line. If you're on the wrong side of the line, you're SOL. You either have to lobby to move the line or find another piece of property. Yes?
Hopefully this is not off the subject, but I heard last week from some good sources that Broward County is going to be part of Palm Beach County now. The Broward County is going to...
It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
There was a piece of property in Wayne Heisinger, who's involved with this school, was involved with, called the Golden Triangle, up at the county line between Palm Beach and Broward, where there was actually Palm Beach County land that Broward then annexed.
Correct.
And the reason it was, the county was done on a perpendicular line, but the Hillsborough Canal was on a 45. So there was this Golden Triangle that the only way Palm Beach County could provide water, sewer, drainage, and EMS was that they would have to leave Palm Beach County to go into Broward County and come back in. So Wayne Heisinger and others petitioned through his influence in the Republicans in legislature to have land in Palm Beach become part of Broward, and then he worked with the people in Parkland to then make it there so they can build more multi-million-dollar homes.
Right.
Counties changing their boundaries is kind of like a major thing. There was a rationale to do that. No. You have to realize Palm Beach County hates Broward County.
Yes, I know that. That's why,
Whoever told you that, I don't know what they're talking about. It's not going to happen.
Not going to happen.
What's that? Oh, why they hate you? Well, it's very simple. If you live in Broward, you hate Miami-Dade because you think they're too dense.
Yeah.
And if you live in Palm Beach, you hate Broward because you think they're too dense. And then if you live in Martin County, you hate Palm Beach because they're too dense. And that's, I'm serious. You know? So they don't want to be like, So let me tell you how not to get your 3 votes. Never go to a local government in Broward or Palm Beach County and show Miami-Dade pictures of what they're doing. What I do, I show something and don't say what city it is, or I show something from Portland, Seattle, Asheville, something that's nice, that's not that, rod of, people to the south. Okay, we could spend a whole course on environmental stuff. But this is the bottom line. Just because you own it doesn't mean you have the right to develop it. That is called wetlands. Wetlands are not good. Mangroves are not good. Endangered species are not good. Concrete is manna from heaven. The problem is, you want to fill this so you can put homes on it. Good luck. You've got to deal with federal, state, county, local governments to get permits. Maybe you move on. Maybe you can mitigate. Okay, just because you own it doesn't mean... Now going back to the Lucas thing of, hey, I own this piece of property. You say I can't develop it. I'm going to sue you. I thought that's what you said on the Lucas case. Government says you can't do anything on it. When it gets to environmental type things, it's a little bit different. Yes?
So just for instance, if you bought 3,000 acres up in St. John's and 50% of it was wetlands, you really only own 1,500 acres because the government, they really still own it because you can't do really much with it because of all the regulations.
Yeah, and sometimes what you do, and I've done this, I buy the 3,000, 1,500 I can do no matter what, and of the other 1,500 that I can't, I try to get 100 of that, and I give the rest in conservation. And the 100 that I get that was wetlands is probably the prettiest. It's a balance. My point is, if you buy swampland, a court might say the following. You bought swampland, we assume you wanted a swamp. Okay? The fact that you bought swampland and you want to put 15-story towers, that's not how the courts are going to think. Your syllabus says we're going to talk about the case on the second carat. We're not, because I want you to do your presentations in class, but I'm going to go through it right now. California should just go into the oceans. What comes out of that court, a mindset, ready? I'm not smart in math, but I do know this, ready? The state statute says, because this thing called climate change, sea level rise, greenhouse gas, CO2, the state legislature says, you as a developer, as you look forward, you have to be 29% better than what you would have been under business as usual. Lennar, who started here, I think they're the biggest home builder. Lennar can get the best consultants. Okay? Money's not an object. They own basically something in California. It would be like owning all of Fort Lauderdale. They're about to build a big, big city. They do it the right way. They spend 5 years going through the permit process. Okay? And they get all these federal, state, local, county governments to say, you've done a great job, Lennar. We're going to give you your permit. Then the wackos from San Francisco and the wackos from Portland, Oregon and Eugene, Oregon bring a lawsuit. But then you've got greater wackos in the California Supreme Court who agree with the wackos and bring a lawsuit. And they make this up. You know what they say? Lennar, you did a 31% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. The statute says you have to do 29%. we don't think you've done enough. What? They spent tens of millions of dollars, the best consultants, federal, state, county, local governments, all say, great job. This is what it should be. The Supreme Court of California says, no, not good enough. Remember I said settle? No lawyer can tell you, after this case, that going beyond the requirements is enough. Because this is the logic that they made up. This is what they said. The statute wants a 29% reduction in the bad stuff in the air. There's many projects that are already built that can't do that. We need you to do even more because they can't. That sounds like making me do the interchange in 995 because you let things go in the first place. So in California, a lawyer would have to say the following: exceeding the state statute by 2% may not be enough. And then you would say to your lawyer, well, what is enough? I don't know. So, worst case ever out of California. Until there could be the next worst case coming out of Oregon, and hopefully it goes nowhere. You ever, yes?
Could they not appeal past the state law?
They're trying to work out something else. Because this is the thing. The thing about environmentalists, they're like cockroaches. They keep coming back. If you appeal and win, they're going to sue again. And what will happen? There'll be so much time delay, the data you use is now stale, they're going to say you got to do it again. I mean,
They're going to
look,
try it.
Why they not gonna try to
So
settle
are you
it?
telling us it's best to work for the government?
well, I mean, government, look, the bottom line is this. There's people in California who don't want any change. But let me tell you the sad thing. This is where I think I'll put aside my right-wing rhetoric for a moment, and I'll be honestly tell you where I think the left and environmentalists are wrong. When you get a Lennar willing to do a big project right, and they're willing to compromise early on, you can get concessions from that, and you can get something good. What you don't want is each of you, instead of, if I'm Lennar, I get told no. Okay, I sell the land. Now each of you come in with your individual project. 100 units, 100 units, 100. And it all gets done. And then it's all done, and you say, wow, it would have been better if we let Lennar do it. We would have had more open space. We would have had better overall drainage. We would have had a better community. But oh, that's the problem. When you get someone big, you should want to work with them. Okay, you ever watch late night television? And they show you the dogs that have been abused? For only $16 a month, you can save Spot from getting abused. Okay? You're not, and sometimes you see kids with the cleft lip.
Oh my
Send the I mean, your heart bleeds. Well, the environmentalists are no different. They sued, now just to show you, this isn't about anti-Trump and pro-Obama. This lawsuit happened when Obama was in the White House. They sued him, and everyone else as well. And they paraded these little kids, and they said the following: you, Mr. President, and you, federal government, are taking away the rights of these young people to clean air, clean water, because you're not dealing with climate change. You're not stopping fossil fuel. And they're basically saying, we want you to stop society as we know it. We want to get rid of oil and gas and coal, because these young people here have a future. And if we don't sue you now, and you don't change how things are being done, this young generation will never be able to take Peter Hen's class, because all of us are going to be underwater. And this lawsuit has not gotten to the next level yet, but there's a lawsuit that at least they weren't able to knock out on round one. It's sitting there. And it's basically saying, life as we know it will never be the same if they win. Okay? What you need to know, there's people out there who are not looking for a fair compromise. Because they have, look, I assume everyone who came in the door today had an opinion about abortion, had an opinion about Middle East peace, right? And I'm not going to change your opinion on either of those, no matter what I say. There's people who believe in this environmental stuff, just like your rights to decide whether to have a child or not. It's in their DNA. All you want to do is get your pro forma to work. And there's people on the other side, they're not trying to play fair. You just need to know that. So, is this coming to Florida anytime soon? All I will tell you is this: when I went to law school, we studied the majority opinion, the minority opinion, and what California was doing. Because we knew 10 years later, it would sap down to the rest of us. Okay? Fifth Amendment should not take property unless it's for public use. Supreme Court, in the Keogh decision, said the following. Here's Grandma. She's had the house forever. If the government pays Grandma for what her house is worth, we can get Grandma out and we can give that to Donald Trump back before he was president, and he can do another Trump Tower. We can take Grandma's house from a private citizen, Fifth Amendment, pay her what it's worth, give it to another citizen to do a bigger project. Supreme Court said, I'm fine with that, because you paid Grandma. 43 state legislatures, including Florida, said, what? We're going to kick Grandma out? Okay? So, Supreme Court, the Keogh decision, basically said, as long as Grandma gets paid, it's fine. 43 state legislatures undid that decision that said the following. We can kick Grandma out of her house as long as we pay her, as long as government is going to use the land for public purpose. Roads, water, sewer, parks, hospitals, something public, hospital, you know? But in Florida, you can't take Grandma's land and give it to another developer. Now, I don't like that decision, I'll tell you why. If you like Meisner Park, that's because government went in, took Grandma's land and gave it to another developer to fix it. You have a lot of blighted area. Best way to fix blighted area, get rid of the people who live in the blight, pay them out, give it consolidated to you people as developers and let you develop it. Florida, you can't do that. Now, New York City did not undo the rule. So when Columbia University, a private institution that has a great real estate program just like this, but theirs is about double the price. When they wanted to expand, they make one phone call to their friends in the government. They say, get Grandma out. We need that land so we can put more dorms and classrooms. Brooklyn wanted to have a renaissance. They needed to have a new basketball, ice hockey arena. They got rid of Grandma, they gave it to the wealthy Russian to build his thing. What you need to know in Florida is government can't get you the land for private stuff. They can still get people's lands for true public stuff. So it's a little bit harder, but you can get Grandma's land yourself. Maybe you got to pay Grandma 2.5 times what it's worth. Public-private partnerships. The goal is to work with government. Government and developers can be friends. P3s, public-private partnerships. But remember this, not in my backyard. It's a war out there. Believe it or not, there are people in this world whose greatest net worth is not their stock portfolio of millions of dollars, but it's their home. For 97% of America who doesn't have that 7-figure, 8-figure, 9-figure, 10-figure portfolio, I pray for them every night. Their greatest asset is their home. That's their castle. Okay? That's how they're gonna take their kids to go to college, because they're gonna mortgage their house. They're hoping the equity goes up. And they're gonna mortgage their house when their kids are ready to go to college, and then they'll pay that back. And they hope someday they can retire and their mortgage is gone. But the house is all they got. Because besides their house, they got $512 in the Bank of America account, and they have something in their 401k, but they don't even have a clue because no one looks at the 401k. People are going to fight you tooth and nail all day long if they think you're affecting their castle. That's all they got. One life. We don't have 2 or 3. We're not coming back. Okay, go one life. You get about 50, 60, 70, 80 years. Chances are most people have one home. That's their nest egg. And you want to come along and stick a multifamily apartment building right in their backyard so you can make more money? They're going to fight you. So you got to get to your 3 votes, but sometimes the best way to get to your 3 votes is work with the community. Okay, what happens if I make it a little bit smaller? What happens if I turn it this way? What happens if I put better landscaping? Don't just say, tough guy approach. Try to work with the community. Because you need to know, they're going to fight you. They have no choice. It's all they got. Pray for them too. Okay, additional property rights for developers. Vested rights, estoppel, and developers agreement. I love cutting a deal with the government, and I say to government, you do A, B, and C, I'll do X, Y, and Z, let's write it up in an agreement. And now for the next 10, 20 years, as the politics change, I can live by this agreement. You should always want to try to get a developer's agreement, because then you can sue on it. And what happens, let's pick on Margate. I know I've already said this before. Margate doesn't have much going for it. They really don't. It's Margate. But they're trying to be something other than Margate. And they worked real hard for about 15 years to get about 25 acres of core land on the 441 corridor. A lot of it was the old drive-in movie theater. And they get this land, and they go out to a developer, a great developer, New Urban Communities. And they come in, and they're going to do a Meisner Park in Margate. And they're going to have apartments and high-rises and shops. They're going to do something really, really good. Okay? And the commission approves it. Well, then certain people in the community say, what? They're really going to do that? They vote them out of office. They put new people in office. And they tell the developer, go away. And now there's a multi-million-dollar lawsuit going on. You never know how the politics change. Fort Lauderdale did the same thing 20 years ago. Big project on Las Olas. And what happened? Got approved. Community said, what? They approved it? They put new people in. They said, we're not going to let you do it. And then there was a suit, and so the city of Fort Lauderdale had to write a multi-million-dollar check. My point is, whenever you can get a deal approved and into a developer's agreement, it makes it a contract that the politics is immune from. Try to get that.
Do they fight to give you a development agreement?
Well, it depends upon what the things are. I mean, if you get your 3 votes, and you have your 3 votes, and you can get it done in a developer's agreement, that's what I would do. Because then if those people get term limited out, or they get kicked out of office, at least I have something to help me next time. Look at Fort Lauderdale. We all wanted Bruce Roberts, the pro-developer guy, in. We all wrote checks. He lost. There's an anti-growth, no-growth council now. If you had a developer's agreement, you would be able to go, sorry, Mayor Tretilis, I know you don't like my project, but guess what? I got an agreement. You can't undo it now. Vested rights are the same thing, but you don't have the piece of paper. Vested rights is where, hey, I've relied upon what you've done, it would be unfair. You don't want to have to litigate that. You'd rather have the agreement. Yes?
Okay, if the government lost, can they work with the community to get them to accept it instead of writing the check, or is it done deal?
If you've taken my property rights after I have an agreement in place, you're going to write the check. What I'm trying to get you now exposed to all of this is the more you can work with the community, a good thing. The more you can get the deal memorialized in a developer's agreement, a good thing. Things change, okay?
So the government don't work with the community?
Well, the government does work with the community. They all work together, but there's always different fashions in the community. Just remember, elections have consequences. You just want to build your project. Try to get it legally secured in a developer's agreement. Florida allows those. I love Republicans up in Tallahassee. You know why? They didn't think people like us had enough protection with this government going too far, Loretto, Burt, you know, all this other balance stuff. So you know what they said? That's a pretty high standard. It looks like government's going to win. The House wins. The Republicans in Tallahassee came up with another standard, and they said the following. His name's Burt Harris. He was a state representative. If government has done anything that is inordinately burdened on you, you can go after government. Now, too far, balance, inordinate burden, I don't know what that means. But what this is, in Florida, it's one more thing that the people in Tallahassee have given property owners to try to push back against government. And I'm speaking at a conference in September on the Burt Harris Act. This has not had a chilling effect, but what this is, government knows it's out there, you as a developer knows it's out there. It kind of like keeps people working together, okay? Again, you don't want to win a lawsuit. You want to develop. You want to make money. But I'm letting you know that when you go meet government, sometimes I say, hi, my name's Burt Harris. Oh, no, I'm sorry. My name's Peter Henry. I don't know where that came from. I'm just trying to be subtle by saying those words, Burt Harris. That's like telling government, treat me fair, or I have other rights. But again, this is war, and I'm not trying to get you to go to battle today. I just want you to know there's people who want you not to ever develop your property.
Professor,
Yes.
going back to the eminent domain, have you ever seen something like with the public-private partnership for like a parking garage, and they built like a...
Yeah, in fact, there's one of them in Hollywood where Jimmy Buffett with Margaritaville, the hotel, governments can do public-private partnerships all day long, and that's what you do. The old days would be government takes grandma's land, gives it to me as a developer, I put a private parking garage there to serve my hotel. Now what you have to do, government takes the land from grandma, I build the parking garage in a partnership with government, and now the public can use it, so it's not truly mine, it's a way around it. And again, your lawyer can help you with that. All I'm trying to get you to understand is government can be your friend at times, they can also be your enemy. This, Burt Harris, gives you some protection. Public-private partnerships give you some protection. So, can government stop or condition your project if the neighbors object? Can government require you to pay a whole bunch of fees? And will you be successful in your claims against government? It depends. It depends. It depends. It depends. Since it depends, settle. Okay, this is what I always try to say, and for those of you who were in class last week, the lesson of the Boca Raton car dealership was read the statute. Shall and may are two different words. And or are two different words. Let me tell you something. You might have friends in local government. If the code says you have to do 10 things to get your project approved, and you need to have an approved stormwater management plan, but all you do is a conceptual earthwork plan, and staff says, that's good for now. We'll let you through. Don't take that favor, because the other side might sue you later. You got to follow the code. Whatever the government's code says as written, you need to follow. So, we live with the law on earth. Politics is hell. That's where they're going. I'm suggesting to you, make your money, make a lot of money, but be ethical. That's where heaven is. Do good, be fair, be smart. Class is over. It's really not. It's break time though. Okay? Let's take a break before they close the coffee thing. We got 8 minutes, so we will start up about 10 minutes after 2. That should give you time to hit the break. Want to hit the lights, please?
She knows.